I've been over on Reddit again, taking a look at their Ask a Conservative subreddit, and I came across a couple of questions that I thought were interesting enough to take a look at over here on YouTube. These were questions that are almost certainly left by liberals, but that doesn't mean they can't be a good jumping off point into a worthwhile discussion. So let's take a look at a question by Red Viper, who asks why conservatives say that banning guns will have zero impact on criminals getting guns. Now, here's the bulk of the question. He says, doesn't supply and demand have an effect? If you ban guns, you reduce the supply. Thus, to get a gun, you will need to spend more time looking for a source to get one, and much more money to buy one illegally than you would if they were legal, and since time and money are finite, shouldn't banning guns reduce guns to criminals? And there are some things in there that are worth unpacking and some misunderstanding of how things work. So let's begin at the beginning. Yes, supply and demand has an effect, but you've got to remember that there are an estimated 300 million guns currently in the United States, at least according to the Congressional Research Service. But the reality is, nobody really has any clue how many there are. And that's the problem. You can ban all of the guns, but since no one knows how many there are, or where they are, or who has them, there's no way to guarantee that they all get turned in. And to be really honest, I think we all know that very few, if any, would actually be turned in, even if they were made illegal. And with more than 300 million guns potentially available, the supply would far outstrip demand, and criminals would have no trouble getting as many guns as they wanted, just like now. It isn't like criminals buy that many guns now. The majority of them obtain weapons illegally or they steal them. Hence, nothing would really change. Because it isn't like criminals are known for following the law or anything. Speeders are not stopped by speed limits. Rapists are not stopped by rape laws. Pickpockets are not stopped by laws prohibiting robbery, nor are swindlers stopped by laws prohibiting fraud. Why in the world would anyone think that those who would use a gun in a crime would be stopped for 1 second by laws making guns illegal? It makes no sense whatsoever. Yet this is apparently how a lot of liberals think, even with all the massive amounts of evidence to the contrary. I mean, even if they somehow managed to magically make all guns poof out of existence, even if there were no such things as guns in America tomorrow, that doesn't address the problem of gun violence one bit. It isn't going to stop people who want to do harm to others from doing harm to others. They'll just use other means. And some of those means are potentially more dangerous than someone with a gun. Because what happens when people start using explosives or chemical agents to commit terrorist acts? Because we can see the harm done by Muslim terrorists when they strap on bomb vests. What happens when fertilizer bombs become the norm, or people develop acid bombs to throw into the crowds? The left really hasn't thought this through, and that's because they don't want to treat the actual problem of gun violence. They only want to treat the symptoms. They don't want to talk about mental illness in this country, or the fact that the overwhelming majority of school shootings were performed by guys from broken homes. But these are the people who traditionally fall on the political left, the crazies, and the non-nuclear family types. So we can't blame them, even though those demographics are responsible for virtually all of the mass shootings out there. And I'll agree with you, we need to keep guns and bombs and kitchen knives out of the hands of the crazies, but we have to identify the crazies first, and even calling them crazy is frowned upon by the political left. What they're really trying to do is blame the tool, not the person using the tool. And that's a failed proposition from the get-go. Guns don't kill people. Lunatics with guns kill people. And knives. And cars. And bombs. And the list goes on and on and on. The only common component here are people with problems who get a hold of tools and run amok. Because the vast majority of gun owners never shoot anyone. At least not those who didn't deserve it in the first place. If we were really worried about knives and not crazy people, then restaurants would be slaughterhouses with chefs offing all their patrons before dessert. But that doesn't happen by and large because the problem isn't the tool, it's the people. And the left doesn't want to talk about the people, they want to blame the tool. And in the recent Florida shooting, Nicholas Cruz was showing warning signs to everyone. There were multiple reports to school and local law enforcement, even 2 reports to the FBI, that this kid was dangerous and had been for many, many years. Yet no one took any of it seriously for fear of offending someone mostly on the political left. Because the very idea that there's something fundamentally wrong with this kid is anathema to everything the left stands for. Everything is normal, which means that normal means nothing. And when normal means nothing, anything goes. We have such a mental illness mentality in this country where nobody is noticed until they're in immediate danger to themselves or others, because noticing abnormal behavior, noticing irrational behavior, you can't do that in this modern, politically correct environment, because telling someone that they're not following socially acceptable norms, or even having any socially acceptable norms in the first place, that just might hurt someone's feelings. Never mind that they're hurting small animals for fun. That's an early warning sign for the psychotic. Never mind that they're seeing and hearing things that aren't real. Never mind that they're withdrawn and emotionless. You just might make them feel bad if you bring it up. Well, too bad. I don't care if they're happy or not. I care if they pose a threat to society in general, because those cases never just come out of the blue where nobody sees them coming. In retrospect, everyone who interacts with these nutballs knows that they're dangerous. They just never said anything. And taking away guns won't stop them from acting. We have many cases of mass killing where no guns whatsoever were involved. Take the train station attack in Kunming, China in 2014, where 31 people were killed and hundreds were injured with knives before authorities could take them down. Or the Muslim attack against Christians in Nigeria in 2010, where more than 500 Christians were butchered, including women, children, and infants, by Muslim extremists with machetes. Or the 2008 case of Jae Hwan Shim, who murdered his wife, 2 of their children, and a relative with a baseball bat and samurai sword. And of course, we can't forget 9/11, where thousands and thousands of people were killed and injured by crazy people flying airplanes. What, are we going to ban airplanes next? There are many, many, many more examples of this, and you can't ban everything because the world scares you and you're terrified to look at the real cause. But that's apparently what these people want. First off, there's no legal way to ban guns, period. You'd have to amend the Constitution, and I think we all know that will never happen again. Secondly, there's no practical way to get the existing guns out of the hands of the American public who, like it or not, are not going to turn them in. And that means guns will continue to get into the hands of criminals, and you'll have problems for years or decades to come. And when you take guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens, you make them more likely to be victims. I mean, look at places like Kennesaw, Georgia, where everyone by law has to own a gun. The last murder in that town was in 2014. And that's one murder. Just one. Now look at Chicago, which has some of the most severe gun laws in the nation, and there have been more than 420 people shot and more than 80 people killed by firearms in Chicago so far this year. Clearly, stricter gun laws just don't help. Unfortunately, I don't think any of this will help change the minds of the far left, because as we see far too often, critical thought isn't part of their repertoire. They spend most of their time running around like a chicken with its head blasted off, and they simply have not demonstrated the ability to step back and think about things rationally. Certainly, there are things that we need to do about gun violence, And those things are mostly caused by liberalism. We know that not having a father figure in the home increases the odds of violence among boys. Yet liberals push for anything goes social change. We know that people with serious psychological or mental problems have a higher chance of turning to violence. Yet liberals don't want those people pointed out nor addressed in any meaningful way. They can't handle talking about the real cause of violence, unstable and mentally challenged people, because they're too emotionally immature to do so. But whether they like it or not, that's the real answer, and it will continue to be the real answer, regardless of how many anti-gun crusades they go on. You need to learn how to live in the real world. How long do you think it's going to be before the far left learns to do so?